Well, special edition of Bacon Bits. I don't know if we're going to do this on the brag anymore, but maybe we will. Let's see. I guess we'll just see how it goes. 20 minutes late as usual. Technical difficulties per usual. As always. Professor in his Fallout mask. I know many of you probably wanted the Odd Job hat, but we got the Fallout mask.
Oh wait, we're live.
Yeah, we're live. We're live, Prop.
Okay.
It looks like a rated PG episode of The Strangers, like that movie, The Strangers. We got Oliver Cambell tonight, who graciously just came out of the blue and offered to be on the show. And Oliver, really, this is why I even did it. I mean, I like talking to you, and we don't get to very often. So because you're busy, you do a lot of streams, right?
Look. Let me tell you something. First and foremost, flattery gets you everywhere. No, it's. I miss talking to people and having a meeting of the minds and going through the thought process on these big issues, right? From gaming to the social stuff that's going on. I think it's still important to have those conversations, and I obviously saw them taper off a lot. And I was like, here's an opportunity, and let's do it. Let's get people talking again. When people stop talking, that's when things are really bad. Right?
Yeah, nice. 100%. I totally agree. And I actually I always had fun on the streams. To be honest with you, the reason I got away from it was the technical issues. Like I was telling you in the, I know it sounds douchey to say the green room, but I don't know what else to call it before we were on the air. Like I was telling you in the green room, the way the thing stuttered and I couldn't hear. In fact, I bailed on the very last episode we had. I had to bail on, and Warpig and Professor carried the day because I couldn't. I remember that. So I kind of gave up on that. I was gonna, I wanted to do a regular podcast because I thought that would be awesome and way easier to do. But then you got to pay if you want more than one guest. You got to pay extra, and 3 guests is more than that. And so that I got away from that too. So, but anyway, it's good to be back. Anyway, I think tonight we're going to try and talk about the Me Too movement. We're going to try and talk about the presumption of innocence that used to exist in America. I'm going to give you a little bit of a review of Mass Effect Andromeda, what I've been through so far. I'm thinking about halfway through that game, and who knows what else is going to crop up. We might even branch out into the Russia investigation. And I know Professor wants to talk about net neutrality.
No, I gave up on that. But if you want to, we could talk about it.
You gave up on it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why'd you give up on it?
I think I was supposed to send you some material, and I forgot to send it. So, but if you want to talk about it, I'm happy to.
All right. And Warpig is customarily silent as usual. I assume you're playing something, Warpig, in the background.
Yes, I am.
Uh-huh.
I'm playing a game I don't have to pay a lot of attention to, so I can listen to the conversation. So I just bought a new console. I just bought an Xbox One X.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
The newest one.
Yeah, brand new. Just been out a month. I got the Project Scorpio edition, which is exactly the same as all the others. It's just got a little bit different artwork on it, but what the hell? It was available. It didn't cost me any more than the one I was going to buy anyway. So I said, what the hell? So I'm using this brand new cutting edge console, this absolutely monster graphics updated console to run a game that's like 6 years old. So to run a 360 game. So that's how I'm using this raw power I've put at my disposal.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the main event here, because I think, the reason Oliver jumped in on this show, if I remember correctly, was we were talking about, I think Professor and I were tweeting about presumption of innocence and what happened to it and things like that, right? And I don't even think we were talking about Roy Moore at the time, right, Prof? I believe we were maybe talking about an actor.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I'm trying to remember. And I think since we had that conversation,
you're trying to remember which actor got accused of sexual harassment?
Well,
there's like a dozen of them now. Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, and I mean the list just goes on and on and on. The Danny Masterson, who was on That 70s Show and was on a Netflix TV show, just got fired today.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. It was Danny Masterson got fired from the ranch, and when I was going through the hashtag, the Danny Masterson hashtag, and watching all the feminists celebrate, it just kind of reignited my passion for this whole conversation. Because as far as I know, there isn't a shred of evidence against Danny Masterson. I'm not a huge Danny Masterson fan, but I haven't seen any evidence.
The statement he made is, if it was your girlfriend, it isn't rape. So whatever happened that the person was alleging, he has admitted that it happened, but it said because she was his girlfriend, it didn't qualify as rape. Now, I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm not saying she's right or wrong, but that was the statement that he made.
Right. Did he? So you're taking that to imply he admits it wasn't consensual?
Well, no. I'm taking that to imply that he admits that something happened, that the event that she says happened actually did happen, but that he doesn't think it's rape. He doesn't think it was non-consensual, and she does. And he says, well, you were my girlfriend at the time, so it isn't non-consensual.
Right. Okay.
I'm not agreeing with him, and I'm not disagreeing with him. I'm just saying, as far as no proof goes, he's admitted that whatever she says happened did happen, but whether or not it's consensual,
he admitted to the sex. Well, I guess, here's the thing. What you're saying here is that you're not agreeing or disagreeing with him is the entire problem with the movement. And where I'm not a fan. I don't know enough about Roy Moore to be a fan or not a fan of Roy Moore. I don't know enough about Alabama or Alabama politics to even have followed his career. I know, obviously leftists hate him because I know he's a far right guy, but nonetheless, I got started on this when Roy Moore was accused of these things, and the very first day, I think within hours, Roy Moore pedophile began to trend. And I thought to myself, the guy could be guilty, he could be innocent, I don't know, but it took a half an hour, 45 minutes for people who had zero evidence and really didn't even know all the names of the accusers yet to go on a massive witch hunt and call this guy a pedophile in public. And to me, if you're going to call someone a pedophile, that's serious business. That's the equivalent of don't point your gun at someone unless you plan on pulling the trigger serious. That's career ruiner, that's life ruining kind of accusations. And I started to get a whiff of, okay, the presumption of innocence is over here now. Kevin Spacey trended very much the same way. He may very well be guilty, but it doesn't matter. It didn't take. No one knew in the 10 minutes it took to start trending his name and bashing him on Twitter whether or not he was going to end up guilty ultimately. The same as far as I'm concerned with Danny Masterson. Dustin Hoffman now accused of some sort of inappropriateness. Charlie Rose from CBS, Matt Lauer. Still not sure what exactly the Matt Lauer thing. Louis C.K. one puzzles me too. Not only was he presumed guilty, but his apology was bizarre. Did you read his entire apology, anyone?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
and
so did you?
He admitted that the situations went down effectively.
Yes.
I mean, that's basically it.
The weird part of his apology to me, though, Oliver, was when he said at the very end, I thought because I asked for and received permission that it was okay, but I understand now that it wasn't. Which confuses me because, wait, if you received permission, what the fuck are you apologizing for? What did you do then?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think he was, that kind of thing that they go on about power dynamics and people in positions of power, and I'm guessing that's the angle he was going from, right?
I'm assuming
that's what I'm assuming.
I assume you're right. I think he's thinking, well, even if it's true that I had sex with them, and even if it's true that or I don't think he even said that. I think he just whipped out Louis Jr. I think is what the allegations were. And even if he's saying I asked, and they said it was okay, but even that's wrong because I'm in power and I should know that they're just caving to the pressure of me. But how? So what are you really saying though? That a guy who's in power should never try to initiate an encounter because he's in power and he's going to intimidate anyone he's trying to have an encounter with? Should they all be celibate? Is that? I mean, I don't understand if permissions. Either women are strong, independent, ferocious creatures, or they're timid, shrinking violets that need constant protection. If you can be so easily coerced into giving consent, and then 10 years later say that that consent was given under duress, even when the guy given the consent did not know you were under duress, what does that say about sexual relations in this country? Don't ever have them?
Well, I'll tell you this much. It makes it really scary. I understand why you've got young men who, just hearing about guys who are going, you know what, I'm not going to do the dating thing at all. And they just kind of veer off in other directions. Like, I understand why they feel that way. I didn't say I agree, right? Obviously, I'm still married, but I'm saying, ooh, like, you if you put your hand in the lion's den and it gets bit off, well, you learn not to stick your other hand in the lion's den, so to speak, right? And it just, everything we hear going down on these college campuses, all that stuff happening, it creates it's a very tense environment. And if I were the age of these young men now, 19, 20, 21, 22, I'd be terrified. I wouldn't be dating at all, just because. Right. You certainly wouldn't date if you were on campus, and you wouldn't date anyone from work, which is half the dating pool for a lot of busy kids that are, if you're 20 years old and you got a part-time job and you go to school full-time, those are 3/4 of the people you're going to meet on a daily basis, work and school. And now they're off limits. Now they're off limits because you're not because, you don't think you can meet someone there, because you're terrified. And the reason you're terrified is because everyone knows guys don't, you wouldn't admit it in public, but all it takes is one accusation. It could be a completely bullshit accusation to ruin your life. Right. And, to get just a little tied into race stuff, but this is a horror story for black guys. I mean, that's Emmett Till, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm looking at that shit and I'm going, no. That's a better example. See, for a while when someone would tweet at me, he's guilty, I just know he did it, I would tweet back the Brian Banks story because I thought that was, a pretty poignant one. But yeah, the Emmett Till story is good too. I mean, much better. Mine might be a little more timely. Right. It's Emmett Till, and well, to tie in just other stuff here. Obviously, I've got my niece, and she's 14. She's in her freshman year of high school, and they just started To Kill a Mockingbird, right? And I'm able to sit down and I talk to her about this stuff. Like, unlike, I don't know, many other people, I don't shelter her from the world. I try and introduce her to, concepts and some of the scariest stuff in the world in a metered fashion, right? And we've had to talk about that material. And I said, this is everything you're reading here is really scary because this shouldn't be happening, yet we're watching very similar situations happen. And, I kind of say there's going to be a point where this scenario may come up exactly as is, and people are going to have to start making choices. And it's not going to end well. It's not going to end pretty. And I've said to her, yeah, you're a young woman, and you need to realize how serious this accusation is. If you bring this to me, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to get you medical attention. We're going to go through and we're going to do all that stuff because, well, that's my kid. I love her. Right. Yeah. But at the same time, realizing, again, an Emmett Till situation, a Tom Robinson situation where someone's life could be destroyed, like not only in the social sense, but in the literal sense. And it's just, it's no good. Well, to me, it's what it is. It's a perfect storm. Okay. It's not 1990 anymore. So if in 1990, if you wanted to get together over the newspaper and your father look at you and say, hey, I think Bill Cosby did it, and you told maybe your buddy, I think Bill Cosby probably is guilty. I have no evidence, but I think he is. That was probably less harmful because we didn't have social media. Now, all of a sudden in 2017, millions of people flock to brand a man a pedophile without apparently understanding how serious a charge that is, without any evidence. And so we have both suspended the presumption of innocence and done it at a point in time where every single person on earth has a giant megaphone that can tell thousands of people.
So instead of just branding a guy a pedophile over your kitchen table at breakfast, now you do it in front of tens of thousands of people. And this guy has to live with that. That's a scarlet letter that you can't wash off. Once you've been called a pedophile, it's there forever. 20 years from now, someone's going to refer to Ray Moore the pedophile. Even if he's found innocent tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. There's always going to be people that are going to call him that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even like Michael Jackson, for example. You remember all that stuff that went down and all those accusations, and he was, found to be innocent. And even after the man is passed, it's still, the accusation is thrown out there.
By the way, speaking of Michael Jackson, I don't know if any of you saw this, but the surprise news this afternoon was the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department saying, "Oh, fuck, look at that. We found the Corey Feldman tapes." I guess he did name some names. After claiming he didn't do it or they didn't have the tapes, they had just mysteriously discovered them in this hostile climate that's happening now. They just found them. So apparently when he said he told Matt Lauer, ironically, a week ago that that he had named names in 1993, that he had told the Santa Barbara Police Department about Hollywood pedophiles. They said no such record of that exists. Now they have it. Now they say they have it. So now it's suddenly an ongoing investigation, and they're not going to talk about it publicly, but they did acknowledge they had the tapes. I thought that was – I'm curious to see what kind of shitstorm comes with that.
Here's the problem. As far as – let's start with Hollywood, because that's where all this exploded. Virtually all of the accusations that have come out of Hollywood, especially if you go back to like Harvey Weinstein, there is enough evidence to say they're true because everyone in the business knew what was happening. And the problem with Hollywood, the problem that it redounds to the detriment of normal people, is that guys in Hollywood who have power, producers, studio execs, whatever, we've known for 20 or 30 years about what they call the casting couch, which is de facto, to actresses. You come in and if you're willing to sleep with me, then you'll have a career. You'll be able to get on this movie. And if you're not, then you'll be blackballed at all the studios and you won't ever have a chance to be an actress. And so that is that
goes back decades. I remember when I was 18 joking about that. Where can I buy a casting couch anyway?
Yeah,
is that a brand? Just pick one up.
That goes back to the 20s when Hollywood was brand new, when they just moved out from New Jersey. So they have set up a situation where these accusations are actually true because they have power, they have money, they have influence, and they have a stranglehold and a cartel, if you will. You know what a cartel is, right? Where the only people who produce something, all of them get together to say, if you want access to our goods, you have to do them on our terms. There's an oil cartel for OPEC. There's a diamond cartel, the De Beers Diamond Cartel. And anybody wanting to buy diamonds up until about 10 years ago had to do what De Beers said, or they couldn't buy and sell diamonds. So you have this cartel of studio executives and agents and other people who say to actresses and sometimes actors, usually actresses, but sometimes actors, do what we say or you'll never have a career. And actresses who play the game got rich and famous. Actresses who didn't play the game were never heard from again, even if they had, a promising career. And you got to wonder a lot of times when you say, well, I wonder what happened to actress X, Y, or Z. It's possible that she just decided not to play the game one day and her career got shut down because of it. So my point, though, is not just that scumbag Hollywood people really did this. And in Hollywood, you got to realize it's not just movies and TV. It's also the music industry, its headquarters in Los Angeles. So they're included, too.
Right.
The question is this credible coming from Hollywood people? The answer is, at least in the instances of those individuals who've been mentioned, is yeah, it almost certainly happened exactly the way the majority of these women say it happened. because everybody knew about it and everybody knew it was happening. And there have been news stories and jokes about it. I mean, the Family Guy made jokes about Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, one was on the Family Guy and one was in the Oscars. And that was, up to a decade ago. So people knew what Kevin Spacey was like. People knew what Harvey Weinstein was like. And it was only after Harvey Weinstein got unveiled, Ronan Farrow took a year to run down all of these stories, to vet them, to get evidence about them, and to run them past his legal department. So, and that's for the Harvey Weinstein only.
Right.
So there have been 90 women who have now come out saying, yeah, Harvey did this and Harvey did that. And Uma Thurman won't say exactly what happened, but her Thanksgiving message to Harvey Weinstein was very, very cutting and brutal.
I saw that.
So specifically in the case of Harvey Weinstein, you have a reporter who deliberately was turned away by several news organizations who didn't even want to hear about it. They didn't even start. He went out, did it all on his own money, got the evidence, and established the truth of these contentions. And then a lot of other women came forward with corroborating evidence. So in that one specific instance, we have plenty of evidence to confirm that what was said about Harvey Weinstein happened. But here's the problem. This is the point I'm laboriously trying to get to, is that they are using, and I'm thinking now of feminists and SJWs, are using the Harvey Weinstein situation and the Bill O'Reilly situation to extend the power of human resources and extend the power of harassment counseling and yada, yada, yada. They are using this, instead of saying this one specific man was a scumbag, they are saying all men are scumbags. And then the scumbags are coming out and saying, well, yes, this shows that there's a problem with men in society. And I'm like, no, asshole, this shows there's a problem with you. You did this. Not all men did this. You did this, asshole. Stop blaming it on all men. And so, yes, it is.
Is that your God voice? Would that also be your God voice if you were doing a commercial?
It is making it difficult on people who are not men, who are not empowered, like your average college kid. He has no power. He has no ability to coerce women into bad situations.
See, that's exactly right. That's where I was going with that my opening rant. We're now merging because to be clear, I always assumed some of these guys were guilty, but not all of them. Now, because they made the accusations, they started to come in giant waves of accusations, and then the Me Too movement started. Then we started to just have this thing as a nation where everybody was guilty until proven innocent, which started to produce a chilling effect on people as young as college age, because you're right, even though they have no power, now they're afraid they're going to be accused of something. And we merged the suspension of the presumption of innocence with the women never lie, and then you put those two things together and everybody's fucking guilty.
And my difficulty is now in the future, I don't care if politicians are getting accused of this because likely they actually did it. I mean, they have multiple millions of dollars in a slush fund that I think it was the House just paid out. Politicians was just, if they were accused of sexual harassment, they would just go in and could pay off accusers.
That's what killed Conyers.
And so we know that a large portion, I'm not saying all, I'm not even saying the majority, but we know a large portion of Congress is so flagrantly and frequently harassing people that they have an official fund set up to pay off victims. I mean,
Prof, do you have a fund like that at college? Do you guys have a harassment fund at the university?
No.
No slush fund. What about you, Oliver? Do you have one where you work, a harassment fund?
Man, I don't have $5 for a Big Mac and fries, let alone a slush fund. You want to know what my slush fund does? It's called I keep my fucking hands to myself.
Right, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like I tell my kid, I'm like, look, you want to know the secret to not getting in trouble and not having run-ins with the law? She's like, what? I said, don't be where trouble is.
Right. Don't break. That's what
you be the opposite direction.
Yeah, you got. It's funny because I used to tell my kids when I was trying to teach them not to hang out with morons, because I guess everybody goes through it when they have younger kids. They hang out with a couple of other kids that you sort of look at funny, don't really approve of them. And I would say the only thing that ever got through to my son was I said, look, if you're standing on the corner talking to three idiots and someone drives by and looks at you, what are they going to say? And he thought for a minute and then he got it. He said, oh, they're going to say there's four idiots. I said, that's right. That's how you get caught up in that stuff. So, probably good advice. I don't know if everyone knows who Emmett Till is, by the way, Oliver. Do you want to explain? I mean, I have read the stories, so I know who he is, and Dinesh D'Souza talked about him pretty extensively.
Can I
also,
one last thing?
Well, you have the God voice. Do what you want.
At Fox News, they've established an anti-harassment training now because of Bill O'Reilly, and they've established it, which means that all of these SJWs and left-wingers now have power over everybody at Fox News. So they're using this not to help women. They're using this to help garner power. So it's problematic in two ways. One, it's problematic because all these SJWs are using this as an excuse to have a power grab. And two, all of the innocent men who don't have, money or lawyers or slush fund or whatever are going to be falsely accused and have their lives destroyed. So I don't care if Hollywood stars are getting accused, because there's a good chance if they're getting accused, they did it because most people keep quiet about it and have for decades. And I don't care if politicians are getting accused for the most part. But it bothers me a lot that they're taking control of corporations via these supposed anti-harassment methods, and they're going to start ruining the lives of innocent college students. And I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman who has a YouTube channel called The Quartering. He's a Magic the Gathering commenter. He talks about Magic the Gathering, the card game. And he is right-wing, or at least, fairly conservative compared to the Magic the Gathering community. And 6 months ago, he made a video saying, well, this cosplayer who is dressing up in skimpy outfits and doing these, lewd dances is only in it for the money. She's duping gullible guys because they think that they're going to, by giving money to her Patreon, they think they're flirting with her and that she'll go out with them. So 6 months ago, he says this. And then she decides to pull back from being involved in cosplaying and being involved in Magic the Gathering and said, oh, I was run out by this one YouTuber, even though he's never said anything else about her, and he's never said anything to her and never done anything to her. He's accused of harassment. So immediately the SJWs try to destroy him. They try to get him banned from any and all Magic the Gathering tournaments by the company. They go to Wizards of the Coast, who makes the game, and try to get him officially banned. They try to get YouTube to take down all his channels. They tried to get Twitter to ban him, and he's actually, I believe, if I remember correctly, taken down off Twitter for a while because of these because of one core false accusation by one woman 6 months after the fact. Absolutely did not happen. And then they make up a bunch of other shit to try and get him banned. They claim he's homophobic, and they claim he's racist, then they claim he's whatever.
Yeah, that's how it always goes.
And so, yeah, it is the real crime of this, and it's innate. Whenever people do something wrong, there are always big consequences, or always consequences that you're not going to foresee. And the consequences of Hollywood people being scumbags and politicians being scumbags and apparently news journalists being scumbags is that innocent people are not going to get the presumption of innocence. They're not going to get their time in the sun, and it's BS. I don't feel at all bad about Kevin Spacey or Harvey Weinstein or any of these guys, but I feel terrible for people like the Quartering and people, who are in college. The guy who was accused by Mattress Girl.
Right. Well, that's what happens when you suspend the presumption of innocence, though. You're going to get some of the guilty guys in the net, but you're also going to get some dolphins. Some innocent people are going to get caught in that fishing net. It's inevitable. And when it happens, it ruins lives and businesses, costs them money, gets their channels taken down. These are the kinds of this isn't like, oh, he stole a lollipop from the grocery store and he was in the 5th grade. These are like, you're never going to work again accusations, or your wife's going to leave you. Matt Lauer's wife left him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. These are life-ruining accusations, and that's why I say with social media the way it is, it's important to preserve, not abandon, the presumption of innocence. And this notion, this concept that women never lie, give me a fucking break. Are you kidding?
Here's the problem with most of these guys. You'll notice that they all have something in common. They all have positions where they're surrounded by insanely attractive women, highly beautiful women. And most of them are socially awkward men, and most of them are not very attractive. So they are wanting to be Hugh Hefner, right? They want to have an endless array of hot chicks sleeping with them, but they're neither socially skilled enough nor attractive enough to have what Hugh Hefner had. Or rich enough to have what Hugh Hefner had. So here's the problem. They should have, to be a smart guy, to be a wise guy, find a woman who you love, who's beautiful, who's attracted to you, get married, and stay the hell away from every other woman for the rest of your life, because you're not as much as a player as you think you are, and you're just going to offend them and drive them away, and they're going to make accusations of you being a creep because you're acting like a damn creep.
Now,
stay.
You're right. Warpig's 100% right. And you know what you just reminded me of, Warpig? Here's the 2 biggest idiots in this mess, in my personal opinion. Al Sharpton, who goes on MSNBC and says, believe all accusers. What? Tawana Brawley? What did you say? You got to be kidding me, right? Believe all accusers? So he's a complete idiot. Oliver, I'll let you have that. You want to say something about that?
Let's put it this way. When an accusation gets made, let me rewind this back. I literally just got done having this conversation 30 minutes before we started. I was telling my niece about the Spanish Inquisition.
You were rehearsing for the show? That's nice.
It was, and I said, "Hey, and I'm gonna go on a podcast, and we're actually gonna talk about these related issues." But I sat down and I said, honey, there's one question I don't see this young, the current crop of young adults, right? The 18, 19, 20, 21s. I said, I never hear them ask the question of, why do we do things the way that we do? I never hear that. I never hear them ask that. And I say, that's the reason I take the time to talk to you about this stuff. I want you to understand how we got to the point in everything in the world. Why do we do it this way and not this way and all that other stuff? And I said, there are countries, in the past, and there are countries still where you don't have a presumption of innocence, and just merely the accusation of any kind of impropriety was enough to make you vanish off the earth forever. Right. And talking about the Spanish Inquisition, I was like, you don't know what they did to those people. Like, she, has just come off of her just learning about, World War II and all that other stuff. And I'm like, man, there was stuff that happened long before that makes that almost pale in comparison, because it's just so horrific. And I talked about why the United States and the Constitution matters, why it counts, why we have these laws and these things in place. And I said, what makes that Constitution so great is that it is, one, written by flawed men, right? It's incredible to look at the Constitution. You go there, you look at it, and there's like, typos and stuff in there, right? These guys were trying to do it. They were trying to do it. And you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. And you're like, this fool just misspelled like 8 words. But that is necessary to be there. The second thing is that you realize that they really thought about what they were doing. Like, there was a lot of deliberation. There was a lot of arguing back and forth, and going and looking at the Bill of Rights and all that kind of stuff, and realizing that these are people that came from a country where, like I said, at one point in time, if somebody just didn't like the way you looked at them that day, you could find yourself sitting in a jail cell just because someone felt inconvenienced by you. Wrong person, wrong time. And that was it. And when we look at these cases, right, what needs to happen is regular, good old-fashioned due process. Someone makes this accusation, and we should take that accusation seriously. That we just should. We should go down, right down the line by the numbers, right? And if things turn up that things are not the way it was reported, I think that people who file false reports, and I'm not talking just about sexual abuse or rape or any of that stuff. I'm just talking crimes, period. People who make false reports should face punishment themselves. You've taken up time, you've taken up resources from other people that desperately need it, right? That's just the way that it is. Right. And I think that people who do these crimes deserve to do the time, right? It always just kind of comes down to consequences. If you take this action, know that these potential consequences could come down the line. And if you can't handle those consequences, then you need to rethink what you're doing. And it shouldn't be this difficult. It shouldn't be this difficult.
Right. I agree with you, Oliver. And I would go one step further and say this, that talking about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, I know I'm beating a dead horse a little bit, but the presumption of innocence, well, it is a legal term. Perhaps it shouldn't be. Perhaps it should be a term that we use as a matter of social conscience. Perhaps it should be something that we keep in mind before we go online and smear someone who we have never met and accuse them of these horrible things and say, well, we have to just believe his accuser because she has a vagina, so she would never lie. Maybe presumption of innocence is something that should be like a less of a black and white legal term and more of something that as individuals, we should keep in mind, because it could be, I have relatives who are teachers. I'm sure that you do. I'm sure the professor does. Mm-hmm. It could be that some kid says that he whipped his willy out in the elementary school bathroom when he didn't. Should we just believe that he did? Should we just go online and call him a pedophile? If it was your brother or father, would that be okay to go online and say, hashtag your father pedophile? Would that be fine without getting the facts? I think, I just think that the presumption of innocence being suspended the way that it has, and even though, as Warpig pointed out, some of these men are guilty, ultimately is going to lead to a lot of good, innocent people losing careers and wives and reputations and having things like pedophiles spray painted on their house. People have showed up at Roy Moore's house and with the intention of vandalizing it and been caught over accusations that may or may not be true. So it's just an important concept. It's not just a legal concept. I think it's one that, as I said, 25 years ago wasn't as important, but now I think as a nation, we just need to reinforce the fact that people do have a presumption of innocence.
Or to put it another way, I've got an easy. I break it down really easy for people. I say people tell lies. Like, that's it.
But not women.
People tell lies, right? That's a human being thing. Human beings lie. And if you start from that basis, you have to go, okay, either someone is telling a lie, or even people truly do misremember facts, right? Or
of
sometimes
course, especially with 35-year-old accusations, of course they do.
Right, exactly. And so we got to start from there and see what does line up. And
right. Yes,
people will get the correct and proper justice that they deserve. And I think what's really important here, to jump back to the Kill a Mockingbird thing, right? Just the basic rundown of that story is very simple. A man is accused of beating and raping a woman, right? And it turns into a black versus white issue. Mm-hmm. What is true in that story is that she was savagely beaten, right? There was an actual victim there, but the wrong man was being put to trial for this. and no one wanted to face that thing. And I think that that's so important, that sometimes people do actually have stuff happen to them. And sometimes people who never had anything to do with it just incidentally looked like someone, or were, you know, in the vicinity or anything like that, and they had nothing to do with it. And when you look at justice, justice just isn't about this one side, right? It's not about just defendants and plaintiffs. Like I think about that representation of justice, which is the scales, the balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about rebalancing that situation. And when you look at a story like To Kill a Mockingbird, it's like, well, what should be done? Well, first and foremost, that man should be on trial, right? Yeah. And this one needs to be let go. What are we here for? Are we here for a racial issue, or are we here to deal with a crime that has been committed? And I guess that's one of the most beautiful things that Atticus says, is that he points that out. He's like, hey, there's something happened to this woman, but we're all sitting here weighing one man's life who has nothing to do with it.
By the way, Oliver, we've re-entered the cycle now where schools are trying to ban that book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Book, you're illustrating so eloquently how it teaches you so many good lessons.
It's so important. It's so important, and it's pretty obvious on why they're doing that, because it always comes up, what, every 10 years or so, roughly.
Right.
Like, yeah. Oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Well, guess what?
It's always Tom Sawyer and To Kill a Mockingbird every single time.
Every single time, because it puts very ugly things.
Huck Finn, yeah, sorry, Huck Finn.
Yeah, Huckleberry Finn. And it puts really, really ugly truth in how people actually are in front of people's faces. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. The world is a very mean and nasty place at times. And I think the greatest tragedy here is that we have a generation of adults whose parents and their mentor figures or teachers or whatever failed them. Mm-hmm. They did not adequately prepare them for a world where things happen, horrific things happen. And I think that's right. the thing that bothers me more than any of it, is that, yeah, we should be taking a look at all of this stuff. We should go, hey, this is messed up. I don't want a guy like that represent me. If he's doing that kind of stuff, you can prove it. No, I don't want to be represented by those guys. But at the same time, you know what? I'm not taking responsibility for crimes and evils I haven't done.
It's always the professors that let us down. That's how I feel too. I think we're gonna do a drinking game here where if Professor just falls asleep, we're all gonna do a couple shots.
No,
he hasn't said a word in an hour.
I'm purposely being silent because I know if I say anything wrong, you know, this is recorded and someone will bring it up to some college administrator and say I'm somehow degrading women. So I think it's best to keep my mouth shut.
Now you see the chilling effect this stuff has?
It does have a chilling effect. Yeah. But I guess I would say that you hear a lot that, especially with the Roy Moore case, that, oh, yeah, but this is not a criminal trial, so presumption of innocence doesn't hold because we're trying him in the court of public opinion. But, you know, I don't really like that attitude, because to me, the presumption of innocence is written in the Constitution. And, you know, going back to what Oliver said, we want to do something that's just. And I see the presumption of innocence as, regardless of whether it's in a criminal situation or, you know, just the Roy Moore, the court of public opinion, that's the just attitude to have. Presume someone is innocent until proven guilty. And if you don't do that, then it's a very huge slippery slope, because you get what's happening on college campuses where, you know, a lot of guys that are being accused of some of these things, it turns out they're actually innocent. Warpig brought up the guy involved with Mattress Girl. Mm-hmm. And the reason we're seeing that is that SJWs, again, I think that's Oliver or Daddy Warpig brought this up, they're taking advantage of this situation and saying, hey, you know, you have to believe the accuser all the time. And yeah, so we're getting into a big mess right now. And someone in the chat stream said it best. Okay, trust, but verify. Okay, I think that's probably the right attitude to have. And I better shut up.
Well, see, Professor, though, you're right, because again, the presumption of innocence being a legal term means you're not just going to get thrown in jail on the assumption that you're guilty until someone proves you innocent, because you shouldn't pay a consequence for an action you may not have taken until you're proven guilty. It wouldn't be fair to provide you with a consequence. But in the court of public opinion, if you're found guilty, there is still a consequence. You can get fired. You can get, and I know I've been through the list. I'm not going to, ramble on about it again, but there is a consequence to being found guilty of these things in the court of public opinion with very, very few, if any, verifiable facts or evidence. So, go ahead.
Here's a deeper problem. One of the things that's specifically forbidden in the Constitution is what they call ex post facto laws. So back in the good old days of medieval England, they had the ability to pass ex post facto laws, which is if you went out and did something that was perfectly legal, there was no law against it, they could pass a law that said, okay, this is now illegal, and everybody who's been doing this for the last 20 years, we can throw you in jail.
Right.
So they forbid Congress from making ex post facto laws because that is just so easily abusable. The big problem with, at least with these public cases, is not presumption of innocence, or not just presumption of innocence. It is literally ex post facto laws, where you go and date a woman and go out for the night and you lie to her and tell her you're a surgeon and you're rich and you're not. She agrees, gives consent to sleep with you, and then the next day or a week later or a month later finds out that you're not who you said you were and retroactively withdraws consent.
Right. Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
What used to be perfectly reasonable, legal, is now absolutely wrong because it's now retroactively just deemed to be rape. Well, that's insane. You can't retroactively rape someone. You just can't. It's physically impossible. Time doesn't flow that direction.
Right.
But again, we are now basically legitimizing that statement. Feminists are, because of their neuroses and their anti-male sentiments. They're so common among third-wave feminists. They're legitimizing ex post facto laws where, from now until the end of time, if the woman decides that she doesn't like you anymore, then it retroactively became rape.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. You're right. It's almost like you have a notary public with you in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Well, so again, if you're a guy, your two choices are if you want to avoid this, if you want to just, okay, I want to take whatever preventive measures I can to make sure this never happens to me. So let's just assume that's your goal. Some of you might not care. You might be, well, yeah, it's probably not going to happen to me, so I'm not going to worry about it. That's your choice. That's your life. But if you're absolutely determined never to allow that to happen to you, you have one of two choices. Never, ever, ever sleep with a woman, ever, or never, ever, ever sleep with a woman you're not married to. That's it. Those are your two choices. And I hate to, people are going to be angry at me and saying, oh, you're being moralizing or you're putting people down. I'm like, no. I'm just telling you, practically speaking, there's absolutely no way to guarantee that you're not going to get retroactively accused of rape. You date a girl, you've been dating a girl for months, you decide to break up with her. You had sex with her while you were dating. Well, now you're guilty of rape in not an illegal sense, but in the sense that she can accuse you and make a big stink, and all you can say is, well, yes, we did have the sex, but it was perfectly consensual. Well, it's starting to be to where that no longer matters. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying, if you want to protect yourself, either don't get involved with women or only get involved with women in a marriage. That's it. Those are the only two ways you can guarantee it. Every other time you go out and sleep with somebody, if you're not married, you're taking a chance that you're going to get accused of rape for something that was perfectly consensual when you did it.
You know what's scary, though, Daddy Warpig? Because we have to take this sexual harassment training every year at the university.
Yeah.
But let's say you're in the middle of having sex with a consensual partner, or it starts out consensual. They tell you in this training that every step of the way you have to ask, is this are you still okay with this? So let's say you're having sex and you switch positions. You have to ask. I'm sorry I brought that up. That sounds funny. But you have to ask, are you okay with this? Because if you assume, and the training says, don't assume your partner's okay with some new sexual activity. Yeah, and if they aren't, they can come back later on, like you said, and say, yeah, it was consensual in the beginning, but then he did something in the middle that I didn't like. He didn't ask my permission to do this, and it wasn't consensual. And that person can be accused of rape. So it's a very good point you brought up.
That's what happened with Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah. Let's put it like this. Way back in the days of yore, we'll say just a few years after the year 2000, Dave Chappelle did a skit with the love contract. And we all laughed because it seemed absurd. And all I can say is that shit was not supposed to be an instruction manual. It wasn't.
It's so funny that you brought that up, Oliver, because I was going to bring up Chris Rock.
Right. Like, he's talking the love contract and what you will do and what you won't do and all that. And we're all laughing like, oh, that's so ridiculous. That's so silly. But now it's kind of getting to that point where people are looking at that and they're going, I may have to do this just to protect my own ass. And that's a little terrifying, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was going to say the how far we've come with the women can't lie thing, because I can remember that Chris Rock skit in the 90s where he said, men lie about little things like, like they stay at happy hour late. They come home and tell their wives, oh, I had to work late at the office. Women lie about stuff like, he's yours.
That's awful. Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Oh. I had to process it for a second. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. That's a terrible person. But here's what the real truth of it is with lies. People will use lies in a manner in which they think it will hurt you most. And that's the truth of it. That's what people do. If they think that this accusation can even instill a fraction of doubt about who you are or your character or any of that stuff, if they think it'll be effective, they'll do it. And no one should be surprised by this because we watch it every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Every 4 years. Election comes around, boy, you will hear some of the biggest whoppers you've ever heard. And this person skins goats every weekend. We got a file footage from a dude that we had run out to their farm and hide in the brush for 7 days. Like, they will tell you some zingers. And people buy it because of those biases, what they want to believe versus what is true. And the roughest thing I've had to teach my niece was having this conversation and going, honey, there are people out in the world that rape other people, and it's not right. And I don't care who it is. I said, men do it, women do it too. I said, and every time I talk to her, I show her, the studies, I show her the news articles. I don't give her my opinion. I say, this is what is. I said, my opinion about this thing is separate from those facts. I showed her a thing where it was an article where they were talking about it's actually worse in women's prisons than it is in men's prisons. The type of sexual assault and stuff that goes down in there. It's crazy. Like, but we've all been taught to think that, oh, that couldn't happen. No, that's exactly why it happens, because everyone's got this thought, oh, that thing would never happen. So people tend to get away with it more. And I said, you have a right to protect your body from unwanted advancements, people touching you in ways you don't want. I said, you're my kid, and I expect you to protect your person. And if somebody doesn't hear you the first time, you make sure they hear you the second time. And I don't mean just, saying no a little bit more. If you have to get rough with someone who won't get their hands off you, so be it. So I've spent the past 6 months teaching my kid how to take someone's wrist and lock it up. And I say, you know what? If they put their hands on you, and they won't listen to what you're saying, you make sure it's the last time they put their hands on anyone.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice.
The way it is. That's it. You make them know. I said, you know why? She was like, why? And I said, because when word gets around that you're the girl that breaks people's fucking hands, people will not leave you alone.
You know what? We're going to revisit this show in 5 years when she can't get a prom date and find out.
You're like, hey, how come I can't get it? Well, you know, I mean, she does snap wrist. You see a whole bunch of random people walking around with their hands on backwards. You'll be like, oh. The bad news will travel fast. They'll go, oh, she's not playing around. And I know she's not. Because
I think else that they need to understand too, Oliver. And if I had to give advice, you know, to someone, it's a rough advice. But if you think you're the victim of some sort of assault like that, like sexual assault, the longer that you sit on it, the more unprovable it becomes. So, in the case of Roy Moore, this woman comes out, 30 years later. It's just not provable anymore. And it would have been the day after or the week after, probably the month after. But 30 years later, you're never going to prove that claim. And you have to understand, that people are going to be suspicious of a 30-year-old claim, especially when you drag it out in the middle of an election. The timing on that thing was suspect. And, the fact that it's not provable is just that's just never going to change. You're never going to be able to prove, unless you have a time machine, what happened on that night 30 years ago. So,
in the presence of that lawyer lady, I can't remember her name right now, Gloria Allred.
Oh yeah.
That is almost a guarantee that that specific allegation was false.
Is a fake. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
agree.
What Roy Moore's problem is that there is enough truth to the accusations that he's admitted to that it made the rest of the false accusation plausible. I mean, one of the ladies faked up a yearbook, but it was so stupid too. They wrote something down in the yearbook to make it appear like it was Roy Moore, but the stuff they added was in a different color ink. Like nobody would notice. Like nobody was going to say, "Oh yeah, this ink is black." But wait a minute, that ink there where you added Moore is in blue. Well, that seems perfectly reasonable. He'd sign half his name in black and the other half of his name in blue. I think that's perfectly, I don't see a problem with that. That seems plausible. No, it's BS. Roy Moore did some stuff that a lot of people, most people, find skeevy, and that's his problem, is that there's enough truth for them to pin the lies on him. And it's very difficult to get away from the lie because the truth is so disturbing to people that he's not getting a fair hearing, or that a lot of people are saying, well, because what we know to be true, because he's admitted to it in an interview, is so skeevy that even if this other stuff is a lie, I can't support him, or I want to see him get banned from the Senate.
And you know what the problem that that women don't want to admit to is this: the thing that makes the original allegation, and I'm not just talking about Roy Moore here, I'm talking about a lot of these guys, even Cosby. The thing that taints the original accusation, which may or may not be true, is the rush of these pile-on accusations where it becomes quite clear that it probably isn't true, at least, portions of them. So when it becomes a mixed bag of which ones do I believe, which ones do I don't, you kind of start to wonder, do I believe any of them? If it's one woman or two, then yeah, I kind of understand. Then when it turns into 90 or 100, or there was a reporter a month ago that tried to pile on this Me Too movement, or 3 weeks ago, by accusing Jesse Jackson of groping her at a photo op in a room full of reporters, where it was a reporters' award ceremony. So in front of 40 reporters and several photographers, he was grabbing her thigh and whispered into her ear something about her juicy thigh, or I don't know, some stupid thing like that. But she also then the next day said the same thing about some actor. So everywhere she goes, somebody in public is grabbing her thigh and just can't resist because she's so overwhelmingly attractive, which she's not. So you see an accusation like that, which you know is probably bullshit, and it's added to accusations that had some kind of veracity to them. You think maybe that's true. Then a third one shows up that's probably iffy, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and then your impulse is to just throw them all out. So the pile-on accusations, it's women who are doing the disservice to the actual victims here. It's not men. It's women. It's the women with the bullshit accusations that take the original accusations. That's where the harm is.
No, I absolutely agree. And it kind of creates a Spartacus situation, right? Well, I'm Spartacus, and it's like, well, one of these guys is actually Spartacus, but now you've got all these people saying it. And in this case, right, rather than being a bold, heroic maneuver, it actually creates confusion and makes it even harder to deal with any of this stuff. Anyone who says that this is a rape culture, so to speak, if it were, no one would care.
Exactly. That's right.
No one would care. But I mean, look, you got 4 grown men who've been sitting here for damn near an hour talking about it's important for these people to get help and to have justice served on their behalf. But we got to make sure that we're not messing up other people's lives who actually didn't do anything or had nothing to do with it. We're talking about it because we actually care about this stuff.
Right.
We've all got our own investments in it one way or another, whether it's you're a man that just doesn't want to have to deal with any kind of accusation like that and doesn't think anyone should, or whether you have a loved one, or you are a person like that who doesn't want to have to go through a rodeo shit show of not being believed. We all want to solve this problem, but this is not how we do it. It's not.
Right.
It serves no one. No one is being served. That's really what it comes down to. No one is served. The victims aren't served. Innocent people aren't served. No one is served. And the only way to correct that is we're going to have to tell people, you need to sit down and you need to hold for a second so we can start picking things apart and figuring out what happened. And I don't know why it's still this way. And I want to present this to you guys as a question. But I don't know why there are women that still feel ashamed to speak up about a very serious crime that has been committed to them. I'm just saying, if somebody breaks into your house and you come home and you find out your house has been broken into, you pick up the phone, you call the police, right? I don't care in the sense of, when I say I don't care, I'm saying if something like that happened, I'll just use myself as an example. If my niece comes home and she says that something happened to her, we're getting on top of that. We're getting on the ball. I had that conversation. I said, hey, I don't think any less of you. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. That's the world. And I'm like, you need to know there's no shame in this. Like, it's just something that happened to you. But for some reason, there has been this shame, this stigma. I'm personally not sure of where it came from, but the only way to break that is to, break it and just go, I'm more concerned about your safety. I'm more concerned about your well-being. The quicker we act on these things, the quicker that retribution comes to whoever deserves it. But waiting, just as you said, for decades, there's no justice for you. Like at all. Like, what is the point?
Because anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. I could go to the local newspaper right now and say some teacher touched me in 3rd grade, and how is he going to prove that he didn't? But once that headline hits, it's over. It's over for him. He's never going to completely wash that stink off. You know, I mean, that's what I'm saying. These are very serious allegations. So if you wait 30 years to make them, people are going to assume that it's maybe not a lie, but maybe not the full story either. And maybe it's like Warpig said, an occasion where you decided retroactively that it was something wrong where there wasn't, or it's hard not to assume that when you wait 30 years to bring it up. I mean, you just don't. Like you said, if my house is broken into, I wouldn't wait a month to call the police. I wouldn't say my neighbor came and stole my TV when 2015. I wouldn't do that. So I mean, it's really the only kind of accusation I can think of where it pretty routinely happens that it's years and years or decades later. I mean, some of these Cosby victims are going back to the 70s.
And tied into that, just as you said, with the going back to the 70s, I've heard about people talking things being a different time, and that much I do get. Where you go, you don't even feel like anyone's going to listen in the first place. Like, I understand where that could come from. right?
Right.
Like I still think you should speak up, but if you're saying this thing happened to me and no one even bothers to listen, I mean, you've done everything that you could at that time. And then if it, fast forward a couple of decades and now you feel like people are listening and you bring it up again, well, I guess that kind of goes into the Corey Feldman thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what it is. He's like, I tried to
Right.
tell people in 1993 and no one would listen. And it's like, well, that makes perfect sense, right?
But
and
look at some of these. Did you go? I mean, I went through the Me Too hashtag. I read a lot of them, a lot of those tweets, just because. And I'm not straying from your topic here. Just because I wanted to see what kind of stories were out there. Were they credible? What were these women saying? And I have to say that probably 25% of them were utter bullshit. I screen grabbed some of them. I was going to use, but there were more than one like this. I saw one, and it's exactly what it said. When I was 15, I was raped by a stranger. A man I didn't know. When I was 18, it happened again. 2 years ago, when I was 22, I was raped by another man that I didn't know. Hashtag me too. So everywhere you go, 3 strangers, 2 different cities, according to once in New York City, and I don't know where she lived before that. So everywhere you go, some caveman is knocking you on the head and dragging you back to a cave. And, oh, my God, were you just raped right now as you tweeted that just now? It's not believable. It's not credible. About 25% of them read like that. It were people seeking attention with the Me Too hashtag, and they're taking away from the actual victims. That's why they spend 20 years trying to decide whether they're going to say it, because they don't want to get lumped in with these nuts.
Do we want to move on to wrap it up, move on to something else?
Something that Professor can talk about?
Yeah.
I could talk a little bit about the Me Too hashtag. I think you're right, Bacon. There's some weirdness going on in there because I've been studying it for the past. It's gone on for a couple of months now, and it hasn't died down. And usually with these hashtag movements, especially something like the Me Too movement, you see a spike. It lasts for about a week, and then it dies down. But it's been going on for 2 months, so someone is keeping it up. By going on, I mean it's you're still getting around 20,000 tweets a day related to the Me Too movement, and that shouldn't happen. And most of these viral movements I've seen, they die out within a week, and it's been going on 8 weeks. So either there's a lot of victims, or
a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, a lot of BS. I suspect there are bots. There are activist groups trying to keep this going. And anytime it starts to drop for a couple of days, someone shoots it up to back to 20,000. Like they're also monitoring the hashtag and trying to make sure it's up there, that it's in the public awareness.
I suspected as much with that hashtag, because I was trying to go through them and really read them. So I'm glad you said that. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, someone's pushing that and keeping it in the public spotlight.
I've been unsuccessfully trying to get you fired with these topics for 2 3 years now.
But I just keep quiet.
I don't know what it's going to take. It's been at least 3. I had you on here with a felon. I had you and Ralph on here.
Hey, I just want to say one thing. Who was it? I think Oliver brought it up, said that this is also a problem in women's prisons. I don't think we're going to solve this problem, because whenever you have people in power and they're attracted to someone underneath them, they're going to try things. They're going to take risks, and some of those risks could become construed as inappropriate sexual behavior. So, and it'll always happen. Right. And I think
I told a friend of mine earlier today that the Hollywood and Los Angeles fires were, he said, "Did you see those fires?" I said, "Yeah, that's just a bunch of directors and actors trying to burn their sex tapes and all the evidence." That's
Okay. Anyways, I think Daddy Warpig's right. We've talked enough about this. So.
Right. So I'll spit this out. I have a confession to make, and I know everyone's going to hate me and rag on me, but I'm going to say it anyway. I like Mass Effect Andromeda.
You're a dirty heretic.
But
shame on you.
I know. Unfollow.
Now, having said that, I have an interesting question to pose to all of you here. In the past, they have been accused of trying to shoehorn in these gay storylines into these games in a way that you cannot avoid them, okay? They say that they aren't agenda-driven. They say they're just there because they want everyone to be represented, or blah blah blah. So, and I really don't buy it, because in Andromeda, for example, it's very difficult to pursue a romantic storyline with some of the females. You just don't get the option. The option's a little hard in the dialogue options. You just don't get them very often, or you have to work extra hard to get them to get there. But with some of the male guys, you're like having a conversation and not paying close attention to the answer, and you're like, oh shit, I'm gay. Damn it, I don't know how it happened. Bam, you're gay. So my question to you is, if these aren't put in there for agenda purposes, why can't you have an option in the beginning of the game, and like you have for, do you want blood, do you want guts, do you want foul language? Why can't you have an option right at the beginning that says, which dialogue options do you want? Do you want both? Do you want gay, or do you want straight? Wouldn't that both give them the diversity they want and allow people who don't want to pursue accidental gay encounters in the game? Wouldn't that solve all that problems? Why couldn't they do that? Anyone?
We're all scratching our heads here, like,
Yeah.
But I mean, I know why. It would be offensive to them. To those people, it would be offensive, because blah 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 blah. You're imputing that gay, relationships are, odd or abnormal or whatever, and blah 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 blah, homophobic, blah 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 blah. You hate gay people, so and that's why they wouldn't do it.
To me, it would make sense, though. It would allow them to keep that storyline in the game. People who wanted that option could have it. People who didn't wouldn't have to.
Nothing that SJWs find offensive makes sense. They're not trying to make sense. They're trying to be offended because.
But don't you think, Daddy Warpig? Do you agree with me that in those games, like in Dragon Age, it was almost accidental? Like your character would become gay and you didn't even know it. It was like you got into a relationship with Anders somehow, and I didn't even know how the hell it happened. For like a week afterwards, I was thinking, what the fuck did I say? I don't know how he Weinsteined me. I don't know how it happened. Don't you think they make those encounters? It seems to me personally like they're making the ability to pursue the gay encounters far easier than for you to pursue the straight ones, and that's the reason I think it's agenda driven. Not because it's in there at all, but because it seems to be. You talk to a guy twice and boom, he wants a relationship with a girl. It takes hours of gameplay. So I just wonder. I mean, am I the only one that has noticed that?
I've never had that problem in a BioWare game.
I think they actually did something like that, though.
They did. Yes, they did with the Anders. I remember, because it wasn't just me. There was 5 or 6 people I knew who played that game that said, dude, I don't know what happened, but suddenly I'm engaged to Anders. I don't know where I went wrong.
No, I mean, I think they did address that. I'm trying to remember which game. I think it might have been Dragon Age 2, where if you're about to walk down a romantic quest line, like the NPC makes it a point to say that, and there was even a prompt that says you were headed in that direction, right? So in case you weren't truly grasping the intricacies of the conversation that was happening in front of you, and they would go, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't, and like they would have appropriate dialogue to kind of back out of there with everyone's
right. There was a game that did that. I know what you're talking about too.
It came up in Dragon Age Inquisition, and I'm pretty sure it was also in Dragon Age 2, and it may have been in Mass Effect in one of them. But there was Dragon Age Inquisition.
I just personally think it would be simpler to just let you choose the dialogue paths that you want to have included in the game. I mean, because for one thing, it isn't going to stop here. Sooner or later, there's going to be 57 gender things you can get into a relationship with. You'll be trans and who knows, whatever the other 82 of them are. So just give us the ability to turn them off then.
BioWare's dead anyway. The disastrous showing of Andromeda and the upcoming failure of Anthem, not due necessarily to whether Anthem's a good or bad game, but because people are really pissed off about Battlefront 2. And so Anthem's going to bear the brunt of that, because that's also going to be loot boxed to hell. That's going to be enough for EA to kill the studio and steal their IP and use it someplace else. So,
well, the tragedy of it is, and I'm not really, hugely mad about any of the gay storylines. It occurred to me as I was playing last night. I wasn't really paying attention, and I almost clicked on the little heart thing when I was having a conversation with one of the guys, and and I realized how easy it was to get into this relationship with him when I had been, pursuing the girl for forever. But I mean, I wasn't really that mad about it. The worst part about Andromeda and the hit that it took is that it's not a bad game. I'm playing it. I mean, there's a lot of good. Well, the action's pretty tight. It's a good RPG. The leveling system's good.
You got to remember that you're playing right now with 3 or 4 patches added onto it. When it was first released, the combat was terrible. I mean, it was just abysmal, and they've had to tighten that up. They had to do a lot of rapid bug fixes because people were quite angry about really obvious flaws. The facial animations, I don't know if they're better now than they were, but they were atrocious. They were ugly. And they hired a complete amateur. I mean, literally an amateur. I'm not saying that as a description. I'm saying this person had never, ever, ever done that before, but she was a diversity hire. And, she just was disastrous. Her facial animations were disastrous. In fact, Honest Trailers came out, what's today, Wednesday, yesterday, with an honest trailer for L.A. Noire, right? And they made fun of Mass Effect Andromeda by saying, look, L.A. Noire, which is 7 years old, I believe, had infinitely better facial animations than anything in Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda, and I've played a little bit of it. I haven't played a lot of it, but I've played enough to get to the dock. I was intending to do a review of it at one point. Actually, I was intending to play through Knights of the Old Republic because it just came out on backwards compatible for the Xbox, which means you can play it on the Xbox One and the Xbox One X. So I can load up Knights of the Old Republic and start up and play the whole game. I was intending to play through Knights of the Old Republic and Andromeda and then do a review that compared the two, which is like 80 hours for a 900-word review. But, what the hell? That's how I roll.
Right.
But it was atrocious. The facial animations were atrocious. The fact that you couldn't make an attractive female protagonist was offensive to me.
Based on the model that they used.
And the lady who they like, as they have done with earlier games, they use the face of the actress to make the model.
And she's a fucking smoke show.
Yeah, in this game, they deliberately uglied her up. The guy is a traditional, manly, good-looking guy, but the woman is hideous.
But, he looks stoned. There's something with his animation. He looks stoned. Oliver, you can hang on for a second, right? Because I want to talk about this game briefly, but I want to touch base with you on the Anthem protests.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, Warpig, Professor, I assume you didn't play it?
No. I only play Dark Souls.
I know, right? You're only. Well, I gotta be honest.
Of the Colossus or the new Colossus. I thought that was okay.
I find the quest lines to be kind of fun. The side quests are kind of fun. There are a couple of bugs. A couple of them are strange. I've been saved in some weird spots. Now that I'm about halfway through the game, the load times are nearly unbearable, and they seem to just keep getting worse. And there's some odd things that go on, like the doors kind of auto open throughout the dock and the space station. Now when you get to the door, it sort of takes like 20-30 seconds for the door to open. And I'm not a programmer by any stretch, but I'm just assuming the game is trying to load whatever's behind the door, and it's in like an artificial delay tactic, But
let me ask you a question. Didn't the lisping, flagrantly flaming, stereotypical, and I'm talking like a stereotype, like they would show up in Mannequin, right? Like Meshach Taylor played in Mannequin all the way back in the mid '80s with the gay man with the scarf who was lisping, and oh my god!
Oh yeah, he played that in a couple of movies. He played that in Beverly Hills Cop too, I think.
And maybe in that Southern Girl show that I can't remember the title of.
I'm impressed you came up with that name off the top of your head.
Because I'm a genius. So didn't that Flamer Krogan bother you a little bit? Like,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
It isn't just that he's gay. It's that they've taken the worst stereotype of a gay man and made him 100% that. I mean, it drove me nuts. I'm like,
but it's not agenda driven though, right? What's the reason for it if it's not an agenda? I mean, give me the reason for it if that's in there if there's not an agenda behind it.
It's the same way the same reason that all the black characters in Marvel nowadays are stereotypes. They're being written by guilty white people who want to show how woke they are, but they don't actually know any real black people in real life. They don't hang out with any real black people. They don't go to lunch with any real black people. They don't know any real black people, so they make these stereotypes that they think will flatter the black person.
Right, that and that BioWare keeps winning awards from GLAAD. Every year they get one of those GLAAD awards. They got it for Inquisition too. So and they just kept getting worse and not worse, but like I said, I don't mind if they're in there a little bit, but they're becoming sort of pervasive and unavoidable. And I don't know that it's necessary, but
Oliver, you can correct me if I'm being offensive here, but I was under the opinion, I learned this when I was little. If I'm being offensive, I apologize. I was under the opinion that black people are just as much human beings as white people. Now, just a sec. Don't fly off the handle, folks. Don't get upset with me when I say that. I believed that black people are just as human as white people. And so you're going to have some black people that are grumpy mothers. And you're going to have some black people that are cheerful mothers. And you're going to have some black people that are loners and don't like being around people. And you're going to have some black people who love being around people or very outgoing. And I could be wrong. I may have misunderstood what was in the hearts of every black person I've ever met. But I kind of thought that the way to make a black character to really represent real black people was to make sure they were human and not a stereotype. Just correct me, Oliver. Do I have that wrong? Am I missing something?
I take offense at the notion that I'm cheerful. I hate everyone else. Like, how dare you accuse me of being nice? No, it's so weird. Like, when people try to play the stereotypes, more often than not, I just watch them fail. And when you start with just the basis of a person and you make that other stuff just incidental, is when you really get people's attention. You know who my favorite black character ever in a video game? Like, I don't like getting into that stuff, but if I have to pick one, Josh from Resident Evil 5. Dude was great.
Yeah,
he just showed up and he was like, "Hey, we got to get you guys the hell up out of here. Everything's going crazy." And Chef was like, "Josh, I love this guy," and you're like, "I kind of love him too." Like, he just got in there and handled business, and you just look at that and you go, "Would he be any different if he was any other color?" And you go, "Well, no, it would just be a different looking dude in the same stuff because the character was good.
Yeah,
the content of his character, he was in there." He's taking care of the people that he was trying to care about, and they just went about it. I loved Sheva and Josh because it wasn't a thing. Nobody made it a thing, and so it just felt natural. Like, yeah, people hang out, having a conversation. Some people talk different. Like, that's about it.
Right. That's an interesting side note when you're talking about the black characters, though, Oliver. I know you don't like going down this path, but I was having this debate a conversation a couple of days ago with some friends of mine, and now that you brought it up, I'm curious, so I'm going to run it by you. Yeah. We were talking about the way that minorities are portrayed on television, and how in what I consider probably an overcorrection or a political correct action, they're almost always invariably doctors, lawyers, very well off. I mean, you turn on Blackish, they live in a house in California that I couldn't afford if I sold my kidney. And it seems like they're all that way. They're very rarely are they sort of, impoverished or even low middle class or middle class. There are all these shows. They always seem to be very, affluent, went to Harvard kind of. And I understand because sometimes they do, but. Do you think my theory that I pitched to this, by the way, diverse group of friends was that I thought minority youth were now having trouble connecting with these characters because they weren't identified with them because all they see is doctors and lawyers and rich people and they're not. And where's the black experience where they're middle class? Where's the Jeffersons? Where's that kind of stuff? Why is that totally non-existent? Why is it always upper class and never anything else when they represent minorities these days? And do you think that's harmful or beneficial?
I think you posed a great question. I think I know exactly what you're getting at. And uh, it's hard to believe, right? It's kind of like a suspension of disbelief thing. Like I grew up and I've been through the entire circuit of this. Like when people talk about someone growing up in dirt, like yeah, I went through that. You know, I lived in the housing projects as a kid. I had to be on food stamps and seeing all that and watching things happen, not because my mom didn't work hard. That lady busted her ass. She worked so hard she had a stroke from it, right? She was out there taking care of business, but it just wasn't enough to make ends meet. You know, victim of circumstance and not through poor decision making.
Right.
And when you're that low to the ground, so to speak, it's hard to look that high up and see, oh, you've got guys like, well, just off the cuff example, but I heard about Ben Carson a lot when I was a kid, and that seems unattainable, right?
Great story.
And it's rough, and I think fictionally, the most accurate representation I've ever seen of the spectrum of just that experience is The Wire, right? You know who the scariest guy I've ever seen, as far as, you know, making air quotes right now, but villains go, Stringer Bell, because that man was not stupid, right? Like they're over there trying to figure out what they're doing with all this, you know, the drugs they're moving around, and McNulty walks in and catches him in a college class, right? And he's like, oh, that was that real oh shit moment where it's like, I'm not dealing with an idiot. These aren't low rent thugs. No, this guy is over here trying to figure out how to turn this drug business into legitimate business, and that just makes him even more dangerous. The most dangerous man on earth, no matter where you come from, no matter where you stand, is the educated man, because he's smart enough to know when someone's trying to run bullshit past him, right? Not falling for simple tricks. And when you watch The Wire, I mean, you had guys like Bubbles who were just down there doing crazy stuff. You had your guys like oh god, I can't remember his name. Omar, right? You had Omar, who was just pure he was pure walking terror with that shotgun. But then you had cops too. You had Lieutenant Daniels, right? These guys are running stuff, and you're seeing even inner conflict with their own people, and you're seeing people connect, well, on that real level that I guess what we've all been trying to shoot for. It's just, let's start with the base, where people, we've got a couple of really, you know, incidental, when you look at it, differences, but at the end of the day, we're all worried about the same stuff. It reminds me of I guess to put this one into perspective, way back, I want to say at the beginning of the year, I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but I had to go in and talk at a religious school, right? I had an opportunity to reconnect with someone that was very, very, very important to me. I've got to jump into my personal background just a little bit to give context, but like I said, my mom just worked her butt off, and we even ended up homeless at one point when I was a kid. And just before I turned 9, we spent like 3 months in a homeless shelter for women with children. And I met the woman who worked with us, was fresh out of college. Her name was Jennifer. And she just worked with my family and I. And we, even after we got back on our feet and got our lives going again, we just stayed in contact. Like, we ended up becoming family friends, right? And the thing that really made it stick was she spent time, right? She spent time with us as people, not as victims, right? And she taught me a whole lot of stuff. She taught me how to get through this and didn't let us feel bad about ourselves for what had happened, just that it had happened, and to continue on and carry on. And every time I turn around and I think about trying to do good or do any kind of service for other people, she's always on my mind. And I found her years later. Like it took me
Nice.
about 25 years, and I finally
That's
tracked
awesome.
her down. And now she's getting gray on those edges, and I'm sitting here going, holy crap, I'm getting gray too. And it's like, I never forgot you and all that. And I got to meet her kids, and she was like, yeah, I teach at this school, and would you come and speak about this? And because we're always trying to tell our kids it counts, spend the time, make the effort. You don't know. I mean, for that one, for every 100 people you help and you never see them again, you're going to have that one person that comes back. And so I was able to go and tell my story to, 4 different grades of kids, and just go, the woman that you see in front of you, you just think of that as a teacher. And I said, that's my hero. Like, I model my life off of the things that she taught me when she was a young woman, because it carried all the way. I said, 25 years later, I'm coming back to tell you how she's influenced and impacted my life, because we're people first. And what I did with the kids was I just boiled it down to basics. And I made everyone raise their hands, and I said, who hates the feeling of being hungry? It was a full room of hands. I'm like, yeah, it's a terrible feeling, or being too exhausted, or any of that other stuff. And I said, keep your hands up. As I say this, I said, look, we just found something we all have in common. It doesn't matter where we came from. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. Those baseline human being things. When someone is hungry, we feed them. When someone's tired, we try to give them a place to rest. We give them those things. If we spend too much time focusing on these superficial things, we forget how nice it is just to have someone care for a second about your life. And I'm like, and that's the thing I tried to teach them. And I said, I grew up and I realized what I wanted for myself. I saw what it was like being in that situation. And I made it a point to go, I'm never going back to that. I won't let my own children go back to that. Anything possible. And I emulate just about everything I learned from my mother and with Jennifer. And it's really funny that, I guess, to kind of deviate here for a moment before I finish talking, but a lot of guys, for example, on social media, come to me for advice as being a dad, right?
Yeah.
They ask me advice on all this stuff, or raising the kids, or even ask me about how do I be more masculine, which I think is a weird question to ask, but they ask me this, and I go, look, man, how I said, here's how you be a man. I said, own up to your mistakes, own up to your problems, claim what you've done, right? What, be it for better or worse, and any of that other stuff. But the big joke here is, I learned how to be a man from a woman, because my mother respected all of her sons as being men. And that's just the way that it was. I had a different experience from other Black people, because my mother treated us with that baseline of respect. She said, you will know how to read. You will know how to write. You will learn how to speak English and properly, because people will disrespect you if you don't know how to do these things. If you don't know how to read well, people will run crap past you. And it's really funny that people get so offended by my very existence, or me speaking out and saying, this is my position on things, and this is how I feel about it, when at the end of the day, a Black woman taught me to do that. So who are you going to be mad at, right?
Right.
like you should really think about where you're going with that, because a Black woman taught me how to rely on myself and to be strong and how to be confident. And ultimately, what am I doing with it? I'm teaching my niece to be the same way, believe in herself, have confidence in her skills, not look down at people because they have a hard time, because everybody's getting hit at some point, right? It's just a question of when you get hit and how, but it's going to happen. And I go, sometimes, what makes you a champion to someone else, on the day that they're all getting just beat up on, right? Just the world's kicking the crap out of them. You're the one person that didn't kick them in the face that day. And you reach down and lift them up and say, hey, you're having a hard time. Well, I know what that's like. Let's get you patched up and get you back out into the world, right? Round 2, and send them back out there. I think people forget.
This is a very deep
You know how it's related? Because I just told you about moving on up.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. That's right. I was so into your story, I kind of forgot where I started it.
But no, you're absolutely right, because it's tied into that. It absolutely is, because things like The Jeffersons show one branch of what I don't know Black culture is like, and then you've got stuff like Different Strokes, which was a different branch, and then you've got things like I talked about with The Wire, where you got people really down in the just, oh God, that's awful.
Well, I think, Oliver, maybe I explained it poorly where with the debate, where my point was. I thought that there were lessons, and I think you just proved my point with that amazing, eloquent story. There were lessons from watching other families that were either low or middle class, like the Jeffersons, and saying, hey, looking at the TV and saying, oh, that's just like me. We don't have a lot of money, but that guy doesn't. He's not bitter. He's not angry. He doesn't blame white people. He's not stealing. He's not breaking law. He's raising his kids. He's working hard. There are lessons from those people that you can get that you don't necessarily get from watching a show like Blackish, where everyone's impossibly wealthy and wakes up in the morning, eats breakfast around the table, and everyone goes to their law offices and comes back exactly at 5. Like, there are lessons you can learn from those people, obviously, from how they got from kids to successful. There are lessons, but there are lessons you can take from lower and middle class people too, and mostly I think those are value lessons, not so much motivational lessons, but how to have values and how to be a decent family man. And I just don't see that anymore. And you, would your 15-year-old self see any shows on TV today and say, you know what, that's me? I get that, because that's my experience. And I think they've lost that because they've gone so far over into trying not to stereotype that now they've made all Black families wildly successful, and now they don't show any average Black families. And so I wonder now who Black youth identify with on television. Do they look at any of these shows and see themselves? Do you think that you would have at 15 seen yourself on TV?
In this, with the kind of stuff we have, hell no. You know what? It was a great show that I think perfectly encapsulates what you're talking about, was A Different World.
That was a good show, yeah.
Right, with Lisa Bonet and her going off to college, simply because it was a really, really wide cast. There were Black kids. It was predominantly a Black college, but there were white students there as well. There were Hispanic students. They were going there because of the programs that were offered, right? And people showed up. But you had one, who was it? Was it Kim Fields? I want to say it was. And she was just like really down home, kind of a Southern girl, and she was incredibly poor. She's like, my family is working multiple jobs just to get me through these courses. Meanwhile, you've got Denise with the Huxtable family, and they're obviously well off, and she's being put through her paces. She's getting a little bit of humbling, right? Because Dad's not bailing her out anymore and solving all our problems for her. And I mean, hell, one of the earliest episodes for that show was just about her not meeting her end of rent for the dorm room and getting her fees paid and all that. And the poor people had to bail her out because they were being responsible and taking things seriously. And she kind of got her reality check. I think it was a really good show. I mean, even for Black men, I mean, there was just great characters. I mean, everyone knows Dwayne Wayne when you're talking because of those iconic shades. But they even covered really serious topics. And
wait, did you have Dwayne Wayne shades?
No, and I still wish I did. I still wish I did. But they also covered difficult subject matter. They talked about things that we do to ourselves that I don't think anyone can get away with talking about. I remember in one of the later seasons, Jada Pinkett Smith was on there as a character, and she went on this whole tirade about white people and how terrible white people are, and basically white people are the cause of all the problems in the world. And the character Freddie said, well, you should tell that to my mother. and God, what character was it? I think it was Whitley said, "Oh yeah, by the way, Freddie's mom is white." And J.D. Pinkett Smith said, "Well, oh, I wasn't talking about your mother." And of course, Freddie goes, "Then who were you talking about?" Right?
Yeah.
Like for me, and that just made such a huge impact. I mean, these things do happen; those conversations do happen, but they don't happen in the same space as other conversations do. But I mean, we've got our own problems in this culture, and I think it starts with a lot of internal self-hate and degradation. I mean, why shouldn't anyone say I'm just as good enough as any and possibly better than most? I mean, hell, my favorite movie, like basically when it came out from 17 on, was Gattaca, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about self-determination. And yeah, okay, well, your genetic code says you shouldn't be able to do this, but he does that stuff anyway. And he does it because he wanted to. He was striving for those things. And I think that with our current crop of television, we're not getting realistic experiences. I mean,
yes, that's
so
exactly what I was trying to say. And I think it's interesting because as we talked about it, we thought of all the other sort of ethnicities. Like you could look on TV, you could see Asians in all kinds of roles: FBI agents, cops, rich people, poor people, fresh off the boat where they run a house in Orlando and they're just sort of middle class. I mean, they're all over the spectrum. Obviously, it's the same with white people. Everything from the Goldbergs to any show you can name where they're fabulously wealthy. But all the black characters now seem pigeonholed into these ridiculously over the top successful people. And I think they were trying to do it as an example. Like, look, you can be a lawyer, a doctor, which I get. I understand that. But it seems like the pendulum swung so far that there aren't any, where's the plumbers? Where's the mechanics? Where's why aren't those guys on there? Right. So
I would like to say those are respectable professions. Look, the man that makes sure your shitter is working right there. Like, hey, I need this toilet fixed. Look, here's what happened to me. Just stupid side story. I didn't know for years. I never cared about tools. Once I became a dad, tools became my entire world. I got a reciprocating saw this summer, and I was so happy. I was like, man, I got to find stuff to tear up. I just went roaming around. I was like, this is the best thing ever.
All right, Oliver, here's what I'm going to do. I'm in the same boat with you, right? I'm not a big guy with tools. But I got a couple recently, and I got a router and a table saw. And my buddy and I the other day, we had a couple of beers, and we hit upon a brilliant idea, and I started buying some wood online because, well, the beer bought the lumber, but I had the idea.
Next thing you know, he's built a Trojan horse in the backyard. He's like, oh, I'm in so much trouble.
No, we're going to try to replicate the coffee table from Frasier. That's my...
Oh, man.
Why? Because you can.
Because I can. I think I can do it. I think I can pull it off. I mean, I might lose a finger or two, but whatever.
Right. Something to do. But no, you're right. From plumbers to electrical men. I mean, those are very, very educational intensive fields. People don't think they are, but no, the tradesmen, they put in the learning, right? And they're usually doing it on the job. I remember being younger and going to trade school. I mean, all of that stuff is important. And I think that just as you're saying, there's a big missing gap in the middle, right? Of just where's the average regular person, right? And I never wanted to be super big, super famous. I never got into that we'll say dandyism, right? I never fell into that lifestyle. I've always seen myself as a pretty regular, average, unnotable person. And I don't even see myself particularly represented, right? If we have to go down that line of talking about representation, I don't see very many people like me in current media, be it as a black person or just a 36-year-old man. I mean, I mean, it's kind of like looking at, well, the fitness stuff I do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get up and I move around and I try and encourage other people, get up, go get fit and all this other stuff. And I'm an outlier in my age bracket, right? And that's difficult to parse. And I've come to personally just accept that, okay, you're probably not going to see other people like you for a long time, or you may not ever see anything like that again. And that's just the way that is. And I think this stuff doesn't just affect Black people. I think this is the most important thing. I think it affects white people as well. The closest comparison, I think, would be like seeing women have to deal with things like Cosmo and
right.
Vogue and all that other stuff. And I guess kind of related to dad stuff. But I talk to my girl and I say, hey, you don't need to worry about what these girls are doing over here. Do not let this stuff affect your own self-image. If you're happy with you, then that's all it takes. I'm just going to tell you, you should do the things that make you happy, healthy, and safe.
Right.
And that's just where it comes from. But like I look at this stuff and I consider an achievement on my part, because she doesn't want to dye her hair. She doesn't want to run around in crazy, faddish things. She dresses how she feels like dressing, and we just kind of let her dress as appropriate. I mean, it's really simple. She wears jeans. She wears her video game shirts because she likes video games, and that's it. She doesn't cave into things like peer pressure of what other girls at school are doing. She's like, nope, games are my thing. She doesn't really particularly care for makeup. She just kind of, sees it as a waste of time for her. She hasn't developed that interest, and I'm not going to push it. Right. And it's finding that stuff and giving people messaging that you're okay. Right. And if you're not doing what the big faddish thing is, or whatever the rest of the culture is talking about, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means you're a little different. Right. I mean, just the fact that I'm on here with you, like talking about this kind of stuff, I'm odd to a lot of other people. And I just kind of came to accept that as the way that things are. Right?
Yeah. Professor, you can talk now,
No.
I don't know what's going on with you tonight.
Listen.
You're so quiet. I'm going to get two things are going to come out of this show. Someone's going to send Oliver some of those 90s shades. And I want pictures when he gets them.
Real shit.
The Dwayne Wade shades.
I'll wear that shit.
I will. And we're gonna get a petition going to get you a guest appearance on Fresh Off the Boat. I think it's just time. I mean, they've had Kenny Rogers on there. They've had Michael Bolton on there. I think it's time for the professor to get on there. And and then somehow we're gonna work discrimination hashtag in there.
Oh yeah, my favorite.
And make that one trend. Make that trend. But I also want to throw this out there before I get too much flack. I did not buy Mass Effect Andromeda. One of you Twitter people, I don't know who, sent it to me for my birthday in the mail.
Oh, so how you got long distance hatred? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a joke or like somebody sent it to me, so I didn't buy it, and I waited from my birthday was September 26th, and I just put it in maybe a week ago. It was like the last thing. I just didn't have anything else to play, so I popped it in. So it wasn't like I went out to the store and bought this thing. One of you assholes sent it to me. Probably one of you making fun of me for playing it right now, and we'll deal with how you got my address later. But that was fun. Hey, listen, before we sign off, I want to ask you all one more question. What do you guys drive? Do any of you drive a truck?
No, not me.
Nig.
Damn. I'm in the market for a truck. Well, anybody listening, maybe tweet it at me. I'm going to buy a truck in the next week, I think, probably. I've wanted one for quite a while, and I just don't know. Like Silverado, Dodge Ram. I'm not going to bore you with it, but if you have any recommendations on that, shoot them my way. I'm going to start Wolfenstein 2 right after I beat this, because I just got that too right after I beat Andromeda. So if anybody has recommendations for a game after that, I'll take them. What are we all playing right now? Warpig?
I'm playing Evil Within 2.
Shit. Oh, yeah. I'm going to pick that up. I got to get that. Professor Dark Souls, what?
No,
3?
no, I'm playing Neo right now again.
Oh,
I do.
Okay.
I do have to call the professor to the floor, though.
Oh, yeah?
I want to know, for core game, how fast are you beating that these days?
Which one?
Dark Souls 3.
Oh, how fast have I beaten it?
Oh, Oh, Oliver speed ran it. I saw him. I saw
Yeah,
that.
I've never tried to. I always played in spurts, like a couple of hours a day, so it takes me a while. I think the fastest I've ever beaten it, if I look at the time, it was like 15 hours. I've never speed run it.
It's crazy that I even pulled off half the junk that I did in that game. I didn't even know I could. Right, I just was looking at my time and started cutting it down. I was like, yeah, I could probably cut that down to like 9 hours if I do this, this, and that. Oh, I can shave it here, shave it there. And then next thing I knew, I was running through the game in 2 hours 45 minutes.
No way, are you serious?
2 hours 45. Yep.
Oh,
That's
man.
incredible.
Clean. And when I say yes, absolutely clean, no glitching, no exploiting, no goofery at all. Just playing as intended. It's just I didn't know that I was going to be the Jesse Owens of Dark Souls 3.
2.5 hours?
Yeah, 2:45.
That's
I
amazing.
still have the clip. I still have the clip of doing it, and it's literally me starting with a battle axe, and I finished that game with a battle axe. And you suddenly start seeing the paths, and like the joke that the rest of the boys had was, "Why are we fighting?" Which means I'm getting myself tripped up fighting encounters that I have no business doing because they have no consequence in the long run.
Right. So you just run around some of the small.
So I'm just sprinting, I'm flying. It's just all stamina drain, and I'm just running from boss to boss to boss and skipping ones I don't have to, like the Cursed Great Oak. I'm like, I'm not transmuting anything. And the amount of souls you get from it is so trivial in the long, the big picture. Like I'm still finishing the game at like soul level 66 to 70.
Depending. That's still high, yeah.
Right. And it's like in the long game, you waste, hours trying to grind up souls on guys that are worth 50, 100, 150. When you're like, yeah, but I could go towards the end game and chop one guy in the back of the neck for like 7,000 souls. And you're going, why am I doing that? And you just kind of you figure it out and just start hauling through.
I gotta go back to that game. I got frustrated because I was playing with Professor and I kept running out of. I just couldn't find those embers. I kept running out of those embers and I couldn't find them. And I had bought all the ones that that I could buy, and I just I don't know. I got out of it. So, Professor, I do want to get back to it. I swear I do. But
come on, we'll finish it.
That one and 2 did not frustrate me as much as 3 did for some reason. Maybe it was the bosses that I encountered, or that giant toad, or whatever the hell that pissed me off there. That one
in the beginning.
Dark Souls 3 got so fast compared to the other games. Real story. I tried to go back and play Dark Souls 1 like 3 weeks ago, and I was getting slapped around like you wouldn't believe because the game was so freaking slow. I couldn't time anything right anymore. And I was like, oh no, I have problems. I mean, I did walk in and like punch Havel to death, butt naked. That was because you can see him swinging that thing, and it's like it's a week behind your reflexes at that point. You're like, come on, speed it up, guy. I got shit to do. It was a trip though, and I'm like, I don't think I can play it anymore. I remember when Dark Souls was like, you felt like you had to have cheetah-like reflexes to play that first game, and then after 3, where just everything happens in a blink. Wow.
Yeah, 3 is really nice, just how fast it is.
Dark Souls 1 was super frustrating. It was super frustrating. Although me and Professor had a good, I think it was it last summer? We streamed a lot of those games. We had fun.
Yeah.
We streamed, we beat Bloodborne together. We streamed that. That was a good time. And then we streamed Dark Souls 2, I think, and beat that. So we should get back into that. The streaming is kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime, Bacon.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to beat this, and I do want to get to Evil Within 2, though. Daddy Warpig, tell me about that. Is it good?
Too.
Oh, I'm loving Evil Within 2.
Man, I knew it. I love the first one.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's a good game. I haven't gotten it, but the first one, that was great.
It's not. I'm sorry, Professor. You must have misunderstood. It's not Dark Souls. He said Evil Within 2.
No, yeah. I like the first one. So
you don't play anything but Dark Souls, so I don't know what you're talking about.
And do you play that one?
Do you play survival horror, Oliver, ever or no?
Oh yeah.
You do?
Look, I'm embarrassing. Let's put it this way, like the stereotype joke of black folks in theaters. Horror movies. That's fucking me. I sit down and I go all the way. I'm like, run! Like, you gotta go! You gotta get out of here right now! Oh, you dumb son of a bitch! That's why you got God! And I just go all the way in. And I'm so embarrassed every time I do it. Like, I played Resident Evil 7, and I was just screaming in laughter. I mean,
did you stream that?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
And I was laughing about the dude getting his arm cut off and then just dumping a whole bottle of like Robitussin on it. I was like,
shit,
what
that
the
was so
hell?
funny. Yeah, that was hilarious.
I just fell apart. I was just losing my mind. And then I was like, oh, I can't play this. This shit's too scary for me. And just I was all over the place. It was not my greatest moment.
I actually liked that game way more than I thought I would, because I thought it was going to be just way outside of the Resident Evil universe, and I sort of like Halloween 3, like the movie Halloween 3 where they did the masks. But it was still very good. I still liked it. It was a good story. I enjoyed it. It was goofy. I mean, yeah, the amputate his arm and put some Neosporin on it and keep on going was a little goofy, but I liked it.
One of my boys has been bugging us for like a year, and he finally got us to play Dead by Daylight, and that is good. It is fantastic.
I don't think I played that.
Yes.
Try that.
Oh my god. Like, we were in stitches the entire time. We were laughing and screaming and people hiding in closets, and they added in all kinds of cool DLC. Like Michael Myers is playable as one of the killers in that game. And it's
Cool.
it's 4 versus 1, right? So you're just trying to start some generators and exit the level, but it randomly generates the stages every time. And you've got to make those decisions between rescue someone or try and get out by yourself. And
that's pretty cool.
The killer always plays in first person, right? Whereas everybody else gets to play in third person. So you have the advantage of being able to see the surrounding environment, whereas they can only see what's immediately in front of their face. And all the perks for the survivors and for the killer are you can level those up and earn new ones and things like that. And even their abilities are really, really tightly made. Like, oh hell, now I think about it. Yeah, they just added Freddy Krueger in there as well.
Oh, cool. All right, I got to pick that up. Now, there's a game I picked up recently, too. It was cheap as shit. I think it was 99 cents or $1.99, something like that on Xbox on the Xbox store, called The Park. Really super interesting. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm gonna give stuff away. It's really hard to. It's one of those games that's really hard to describe without giving away plot points or elements. But it's got very creepy. It's very atmospheric. It's not award-winning graphics or anything like that, but it's very well written, and it's, like I said, it's very cheap. And I beat it in, I think, a little less than 2 hours. And you'll beat it very quickly. It's more. I don't want to say it's a walking sim, but it is. It's as much puzzle / interpretation as it is actual gameplay. But it was neat and it was different. And for 99 cents, it was well worth it. I thought it kind of made an impact on me. So if you guys want to if anybody wants to pick that up, that was really good.
Oh, check it out.
By the way, I wrote a review of the Xbox One X on my the regular blog post I do once a week on the Castalia House blog. So. I'm going to bug Bacon Man to put a link to that in the description of the video so people can check that out. I thought it was a hilarious review. I thought it was awesome, but apparently I offended some people.
Not you. No way. You offended some people? Yeah, send me the link. I'll put it up there. That's not a problem. I'm still waiting. Professor promised me an article for baconbitshow.com 2.5 years ago. I assume he's putting the fine touches on it, I guess. I don't know. It better be novel length, I guess, at this point, Professor.
I'll get you something.
You'll give me something? My guest author who never showed up? Don't worry. It's not like I plugged it or anything in front of I'm going to probably wrap this up, guys, but it's been a blast. I am going to try to do it again next week if we can. I mean, I was really, like I said, now that it seems the technical issues are smoothed over, and Oliver tells me they rewrote the behind-the-scenes code or something here that seems to have fixed whatever was ailing me.
I mean, I was having problems too. For the longest time, our podcast would go out in like multiple foreign languages. So even though the auto tweeting link for just linking into social media, it would go out in like Hungarian and Russian and Czechoslovakian or whatever. It was just crazy. I was like, I do not speak Nigerian. Why are they doing this? It would just happen. And so it was crazy. It was fun though.
Well, a few months ago, about a month ago, I agreed to have Grums. I was going to have Grums back on, and we were going to do a one-off show too. But I wound up taking a trip I didn't think I was going to take, so I had to cancel it. But I was thinking too at the time, I don't know if I can have him on and then drop out of the show. I mean, because I can't, if I was going to have these issues, but they seem to be cleared up. So I think we can start thinking about doing this again if you guys want to, if you're interested.
All right.
Oh yeah, I should say thank you because he ended up coming on our podcast on Geek Gab, so that was great.
Son of a bitch! You stole my guest. You Grums blocked me.
We got to talk about his new pen and paper RPG. We got to talk about World of Warcraft. It was great. It was a good show.
Oh, that's great. You're welcome. You're
no,
welcome.
really, I'm grateful. I'm really glad. I wouldn't have even thought of asking him on, but
Did you give me any credit?
Yeah, I think I did. I'm pretty sure.
All right, then. Okay, I'm all right with that then. Oliver, what about you? I mean, it's been twice, I think, in 2 years to get you on, but I mean, it's always awesome. So if you're interested in coming back,
Oh yeah.
all right, good. That's good. That's great because you're a good. I love having you on. I like the Warpig rants, and I didn't know he had the God voice, so I'm going to probably work on that. Professor with that very deep, manly voice that he has. I also want a job as an announcer, a football announcer. So if anyone can get me one of those. Professor says I have an announcer's voice, so I'll try it out. I would be glad to call a football game. I've got to be better than Chris Collinsworth, I promise you. All right, guys, it's been a blast. Thanks a lot, and I'll DM all of you after this, and we'll try to arrange another episode.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Oliver. Thank you.
Yep.
Warpig,
Thanks
see you
to all
soon.
the listeners.
Thanks, guys. See ya.